And just to pick up on one of your points there, and just linking it back to your point, Maggie, about role models, is that entrepreneurs themselves are mega busy, as I think we've established.
Yeah.
Probably haven't got time to perhaps go around and speak so much in schools as role models and so on and so forth. But I wonder if these intrapreneurs, as you call them, those in a corporate environment that actually have the mandate to be innovative and have at least the entrepreneurial spirit, if not the actual title, maybe they're the ones that we can get out a little bit into the community and doing things like that. Would that?
Yeah, I think one of the projects that we've been supporting at Women in Technology is a Girls in IT project, which is nearly ready to go live in terms of it's connecting employers and industry professionals to schools, but the Girls in IT programme will provide you with a deck of slides you can use, an introductory letter to the school, handouts for the parents, handouts for the kids, handouts for the teachers, and literally what you're then needing to give up is the time that you spend in actually going there that night. And I'm hoping having this kind of pack that you take with you will make it much easier for you to go out and it won't take you so long. You don't have to prepare everything from scratch. We've got this information ready to go, and I'm hoping really that will help and that we can tap into a wide range of professionals to go into schools. But yes, I think if you're in a corporate, certainly some employers are very keen. They might have a school that they work with on a more regular basis. It could be a local school, or it could be maybe some of the school governors are employed at the organisation, and so there's connections. So I think schools employers are more likely to say, that's fine, you can take the afternoon off to go and present to that afternoon's computing class, or you can go to speak at Wednesday morning's assembly, that's fine, we'll give the time off. Whereas yes, if you're an entrepreneur, I think you may be more conscious of your own time and giving that. But so many women in my network who are working across the board in technology would really love to talk to schools, and certainly when I put a call out for speakers for schools projects or careers days, inundated with response. So I know that a lot of the women who are engaged with the work that we're doing at Women in Technology know that talking to young people is a key thing that we need to be doing and need to be doing more of.
I think creating materials is an excellent idea. The other thing that we'll be doing with our program is actually bringing the young people to the entrepreneurs rather than the other way around. Yeah. We're also going to be doing it in sort of a peer-to-peer mentoring pool. So it's not about a one-to-one type experience. It's about having 3 or 4 entrepreneurs and 5 or 6 young people together meeting regularly. But it also means that if one of those entrepreneurs has to drop out for that month, or because they're traveling or they're launching a product or that sort of thing, you have the other entrepreneurs who are still there, plus you have the peer-to-peer effect of all doing it together rather than it being sort of a real one-to-one. And it all happens at TechHub, which makes it much easier for the entrepreneurs to sort of take an hour out instead of having to take an afternoon out. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting. 2 more things I'd like to cover with you. And at the end, we'll just look at what role the BCS can take in this, and I think we've perhaps indicated some of the possible roles there. The other thing I'd just like to mention, when we were having our sort of pre-debate chat, we were talking about a specific industry example, and that was the games industry. An industry where we know there's very exciting things happening behind the scenes, because these things are tremendously advanced, and there's AI applications and all sorts of things going on. So from a tech, even CS perspective, it's very interesting. But the media portrayal, at least of the games industry, is one of a very sort of cliched variety, isn't it? And also the games industry don't often do themselves any favours by the way they portray actually gender issues. I just wondered how you feel about that dichotomy.
I think we're seeing changes in that. I think we're seeing many more women get involved in the games industry in creative roles, writing roles, coding roles, and so that's probably making a change to character development and the type of games that we're seeing. We're also seeing a huge rise in casual gaming, which often has no reference to gender specifically whatsoever, because it might be less sort of very strongly character-led and more about activity-led.
Angry birds of both sexes, I presume.
Well, yeah, I mean, indeterminate sex, I think, is the more the point, and so it's less about identifying with a particular character. However, obviously there's still a huge number of people who play those very character led games, but I think we're already seeing a change in that. And I think you mentioned the media portrayal of the industry, and I think often the media portrayal is not necessarily as deep as it might be, because the media in itself is looking for the hook, is looking for the sensational angle and that sort of thing, rather than looking at
what's actually going on.
Well, and also what's of interest to gamers.
Right.
They're looking at what's of interest to mainstream consumers, and hardcore gamers, and even considerable casual gamers are not necessarily the same as the media's idea of the people who play games. And so I think that portrayal can perhaps do a disservice to the changes in the industry. That said, it's not perfect.
No.
There's a Women in Games group, a network for women who work in the gaming environment here in the UK. And I spoke at one of their conferences last year, and it was a room full of women who are all in the gaming industry. We covered all sorts of different topics that day. And I think, for me, one of the kind of pieces of careers advice I always give to women in IT is, join different networks, join one that's relevant to your specific area of the industry, join one that's like a professional body, say like the BCS, be involved, I would always say, with at least one women's network. I think that's very important. And I think if you're in the gaming industry, I'd be directing you to Women in Games and saying, make sure you're on their radar and you know what they're doing. And it gives you an opportunity to meet with other women who are in that industry, even if they're not in your company, but you get a chance to make connections across the board in that area. And I think that's really important. And the fact that there was this room full of women in gaming shows that they're interested, and they're bright, and they're excited and engaged. And I think that's a very telling.
It's encouraging, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. And that group will continue to grow.
Yes.
I think we'll see more of it as casual gaming in particular becomes just, so many people who never really thought of themselves as game players play games now, and more use is going to encourage more involvement, hopefully, and we should see more general diversity within the industry, not just about gender diversity.
Yes, I know a lot of people that are in the games industry at a high level are a bit frustrated by the media portrayal, aren't they? That it's all about violence or sexism, when in fact there's only a very tiny number of games that are actually like that anymore. So we at BCS take that a bit more seriously. So we'll do our part to redress that balance. But let's come on. Also, I was going to do my Larry/Lara Croft joke, so let's just pretend I've done one, and then we'll move on. Just like to address this last question, but all the BCS, perhaps we could start with you, Maggie. How do you see that?
So for me, certainly the BCS should be looking at the issue around women in IT and diversity and inclusion. And I know they have diversity and inclusion on their radar and involved in some of the different panels and everything that are involved within the BCS. They have BCS Women, which is a very active network and specialist group within the organisation. I would always like, if there's discussions about women in IT, that the BCS have a voice and that there is an opinion, and that we are an organisation that is supporting women working in the IT industry. We've certainly had some female presidents, which is great, and I think it needs more development and more focus. But there's so many things that the organisation can look at. But I do like to make sure that women in IT is one of them.
I think there's a real opportunity for any organisation to sort of celebrate what women do and hear more from women, and other diverse groups within the industry, without necessarily having to make a big song and dance about it. So including women on panels, including women as interviewees and that sort of thing, without actually pointing out the fact that they're female.
Yes, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, does that really matter if you're asking them about the games industry, or you're asking them about how they work on financial technology? Yes. Actually, it doesn't matter. No. And I think sometimes we can do minorities within an industry a disservice by saying, oh, here, look how exciting, we've got an entire panel of women here. It's like, no, you have an entire panel of interesting, talented people who happen to all be the same gender. People. Yes. need to just sort of say, oh yes, you know, we have a panel of 5 people, 4 of them happen to be women, we didn't notice. So, you know, it's just about hearing from amazing people and not necessarily pointing out their differences.
I think the EU did an advert which went viral a couple of weeks ago, didn't they, about getting women in, or girls interested into STEM subjects, and it really got slated because of the stereotypical nature of it.
That was quite an interesting debate, actually, because a lot of the negative voices about that video wasn't aimed at them. The video was aimed at young people. And I think it's really difficult, I think, as, you know, someone in my 30s, to then put myself back in the shoes of a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old to think what would appeal to me. I don't know anymore. I'm not, not that. And certainly, I mean, I personally didn't think the video was in great taste. It didn't do it for me, but and if I'd been, I wouldn't have signed that off. No. But I think they showed it to some young people, and I think some of the girls said, yeah, well, you know, they look cool. I'd like to be like that, and it's a really difficult one. I think very much in the industry where we can be very quick sometimes to kind of jump on initiatives that are aimed at young people and say that's not right, that shouldn't be like this. But it's like we're not the young people that it's aimed at. So that is, I guess, a word of caution against sometimes some of the real negative bashing on it. Yeah. But equally, I think the video could have been better, when there are so many great young role models out there that they could have involved. I mean, for example, I know the BCS have supported the Every Woman in Technology Awards, and this year's winner of the entrepreneur category runs her own business called Image Analysis, and you know, it's come out of her, I think it came out of her PhD research, and then she's developed it into a growing company. She's bright, she's really energetic, she's got all these ideas, she wants to grow this company. She's the kind, you know, she would have been the kind of person that I said, actually, we should have been interviewing her and her story to how she got there.
I'm sure
that would,
don't worry.
You know, well, there you go. And that's, I mean, certainly the role of the BCS, certainly, I think as it looks at its own membership base, it's like, who are the women who we already have in our ranks that we could be promoting and featuring, and as you say, not necessarily as a woman IT, but as an interesting IT professional.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think around things like that video, it's if you're wanting to speak to certain people who have grown up within a certain culture, within a certain cultural norm, even if you might be reinforcing that, if that's the way to speak to them, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. What we need to be looking at is earlier and more generally changing the cultural norm about how we speak to people in a gendered way from a very young age. If we can remove that, then we can stop reinforcing it by creating more communications in a gendered way.
Yes.
But if the best way to reach someone at the moment is to appeal to something about their interest that you know because of their gender, it's a bit tricky. You don't want to, but if that's going to help you get the message across,
it might need to be done at some point.
That's difficult. But I'd echo what Maggie said about the Every Woman in IT Awards. I was there, and it was so exhilarating to see so many amazing, I mean really amazingly talented people with incredible experience who came from different countries, different backgrounds, different walks of life. Their lifestyles are different. Their family lives are different. That, you know, all of that difference together was what was really interesting. It wasn't about their gender, and so I think looking for those role models and having to sometimes dig more deeply to not just use the usual suspects. And the same goes for men. You know, we present the same role models over and over again. I mean, the number of people who when asked, you know, who's your favorite entrepreneur, will say Richard Branson because he's the only one they know. You know, that's going to create the problem. So just more diversity generally, I think, is the answer there.
I certainly think at a conference level as well. Quite often I read the rundown of speakers at a tech conference, and there's sometimes no women whatsoever. And I mean, lots of debate online saying, did you even ask? You know, did you put a call out to get women to come forward? And often the conference organiser will say yes, but nobody came forward, nobody put themselves forward. And I think there is a role there for women ourselves to put ourselves forward and say, do you know what? Yeah, if I've been asked to speak at a conference, that means they think I'm good enough. And yes, I'll say yes, thank you very much. I will present my paper, or I will present the work that I've been doing around this project. But I also think in terms of events and panel debates, it is good to make sure that there is a mix on there, and certainly at the events that we run at Women in Technology, I do try always to have a male voice somewhere I don't always, because sometimes I get a brilliant panel of women and I'm like, brilliant, that's great, but I think it is good to have a mix of what, whatever kind of events that you're putting on. But certainly at conferences, you scroll down through all the pictures and just think, gosh, there's like one woman out of 30 speakers. I'm sure they must have been able to find more. And it's the usual suspects. So that's why, say, initiatives like the Everyone in Technology Awards, which are uncovering more and more role models. We have a role models page on our website where we interview lots of different women doing all sorts of different things. It's because there are women out there doing great stuff, but a lot of them are under the radar. They maybe don't have they've not got a PR machine behind them putting themselves forward things. But there are great women out there doing great stuff, and I think part of the role that BCS can do is to, as I said, to find their own members who are doing great stuff and have them maybe writing articles in IT Now or being interviewed or different things. I think that's really important. And then coming back to all the amazing different stories in the entrepreneur space, it's like, how do we find more of them and share their stories?
Well, I think there's been a real positive tenor for the chat that we've had this morning. I'd like to thank you very much for coming and talking to us, Elizabeth and Maggie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.